The story about Moses not being able to enter into the promised land isn't really about his anger issue or the fact that he disobeyed God by striking the rock instead of talking to the rock. The story of Moses not entering into the promised land has a greater significance. More than the surface narration, Moses represents the law, and the promised land represents the covenant of God, promised not to Israelites but to God's people. The promised land isn't just a location in Canaan where they'll just go and have milk and honey. No, the spiritual implication of the promised land is Jesus. That God is taking them from their past life to a place where grace abides. And so the promised land, though it's a physical location, but it was God just using physical things to explain something spiritual. And He's taking man from sin to a place in Jesus. Alright. And Moses represents the law. And one thing we've come to understand about studying the Bible, especially in the New Testament, is the law points to Jesus. But the law cannot stay to be glorified with Jesus. The law cannot stay side by side and be glorified with grace. The law only points to grace. So Moses, as one that represents the law, took the people of God and pointed them towards grace, towards the promised land. But he himself, representing the law, could not enter because the law does not work side by side with grace. That is why in the New Testament, Moses was referred as one who represents the law. And that's why he is respected so much in the story of Israelites. But when Jesus came, Jesus said, I brought fulfillment to them. So now that I'm here, I bring an end to the law. So Jesus is the promised land. And as we are in Jesus, the law has no power here. One will say, but the Bible explains that Moses did not enter because he was angry. Yes, God had to allow certain things physically to happen to manifest His will. Do you really think, okay, the Bible speaking, that before man fell, Christ was slain from the foundation of the earth? That's before man fell. But man had to fall for the death of Christ to manifest what God wants to manifest, His love and redemption. So God needs events to put in play His will. And sometimes if you follow those events pen on paper, you will only get logos, you will not get Rhema. For you to get Rhema, you need to learn to find Jesus in those stories. And then you see that it's not really about what was happening, but the message God is trying to pass to humanity that was fulfilled in Jesus. So Moses, whether he spoke to the rock, hugged the rock, kissed the rock, for what Moses represented, he could not go into the promised land. Whether he was perfect or not, he could not, because he represented the law, and the promised land represented a dimension of God. And that is the dimension is Jesus. The law only pointed man to Jesus, but the law says, this is where I stop. This is where my own journey ends, and I've done my part. So let's understand this so that by the time you are teaching the story of Moses, we must also teach it in the light of Jesus.